it earlier. That way both parts match up, and I'm going to cast both sides. I'm going to do the bottom one first, this side right here, which is the bottom of the horn toad, but it's the upside right now. I've used a piece of Tupperware or refrigerator dish with the bottom cut off and sealed it up just with some stoneware clay around the edge. Then I'm going to mix the plaster of Paris. It's #1 pottery plaster, and I've put enough water in here, which is approximately it's going to add about 50% of volume when I add the plaster, so the level will be up to here rather than here when I finish, and it should be plenty enough to fill that up. What I do with the plaster is just sprinkle it in slowly, a little bit at a time. Hydrocal will also work for making molds. It's a denser material. It's stronger, but it doesn't absorb quite as well as #1 pottery plaster. I've used them both, and I prefer, though, to use this #1 pottery plaster. The mold is a little softer, but it's more absorbent, and the sprigs release a little bit better. I keep sprinkling until the plaster mounds above the surface of the water. So it ends up looking something like this. Then I'm going to mix it up. Jar some of the bubbles out of it. And I'm going to let it sit for about 20 seconds. Give it a little time for the water to encapsulate the little particles of plaster. Earlier I was using sort of little drawings of horned lizards, and the one from the Sonoran Desert is this bottom one. And I find these drawings work a lot better than photographs. And I get them at the Arizona Rim of the Public Library or out at the Botanical Gardens. They both have libraries. They let me look through their books and then make photocopies of whatever I want. Now that 20 seconds have passed, I'll remix it a little bit, trying to make sure there's no lumps. And then I'm going to paint into the crevices and edges of the model, the plasticine model. This model is built from oil-based or plasticine clay. And this helps prevent air bubbles from accumulating down in the little crevices or edges of the model. This bottom side of the horned lizard is relatively smooth, and there's not many places where I have to worry about making sure the plaster goes down. I use a soft brush so I don't scar up the plasticine clay. Then I pour the plaster in. One thing you have to be very cautious with when working with plaster or Paris is you put none of it down a sink. In fact, I'm going to rinse this out with about an ounce of water and pour it in a trash can before I wash this. I'll be right back. Then, after the plaster is poured in, I vibrate the mold. Sometimes if I can, I jostle it. And sometimes you can see air bubbles coming to the top. Always being vigilant that there's no leaks anywhere. If there is, you have to have a little bit of extra clay and try to stop it up. But if you do it correctly, if you seal it up very good to start with, that won't happen. Now, that's finished. I have to let it harden. It'll take about maybe 15 minutes to start to get hard, and then I let it get completely hard, and the plaster will get warm when that happens, and you have to be careful to let it get cool again before you remove the plasticine clay or the model from it. If you do it too soon and the model of the plasticine clay is warm, it sticks and gets gooey and makes a mess out of the mold. Now that the mold is cool to the touch, it actually gets cold because the water is evaporating out. Then I can remove it from the piece of glass. So what I do with one of these drywall knives, I just insert it just gently. Now remember, I don't want to apply a lot of pressure because I have my other model for a mold right underneath it. So once it's loose, I can remove it and then clean up the regular pottery clay that I used as the dam. Push down, it comes out better. Then I can take another piece of my clay, the plasticine clay, and pull it out. Then what I immediately do is take just over to a trash can, and with one of these little rasps, I clean the edges off. One word of caution, pieces of plaster are not compatible with clay, and so I want to round these edges thoroughly and making sure everything goes in the trash can. I'm rounding them so they don't chip, and I don't want to get pieces later in clay. And also I'm very careful right now to make sure everything goes into the trash can. Then I touch the mold up. I inspect it for flaws, and I want to get the edge done a little bit so the mold will release later. Now, we have one half of it done, and now we come back to the other. And voila, I have my other part of the model here. And using some pottery clay, I'll go ahead and seal this up